Number 10. The truth behind the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar is one of the most misunderstood orders in all of history. And the truth behind this ancient organization is actually a lot more complicated than modern pop culture would lead you to believe. The Knights Templar were essentially monks that were sworn to harsh codes of poverty, obedience, abstinence, and hardcore fighting against the enemies of Christ. Before the Knights Templar came along, knights were often considered rascals. They looted villages, hurt innocent people, and were just generally jerks. But the Knights Templar changed all that by fighting in the Crusades and bringing much-needed order to wherever they went. But here's where the Knights Templar became controversial and way too powerful. They ended up being so wealthy that they became a problem for the ruling parties of Europe. They opened up a sort of banking system where pilgrims could deposit money at one temple church and pick up their cash at a different one. According to the History Channel, King Philip IV even went to war with the Knights Templar after they were driven out of the Middle East in the 1200s. And as a ridiculously powerful private organization, they eventually met a gruesome end in 1307, when French officials raided every single Templar house, arrested and tortured the knights, and even burned these men at the stake before the Pope officially dissolved the order in 1312. And guess what happened when all the Templars were dead? Yep, the King of France and the King of England stole their money. And this is the truth about what happens when an independent force for good goes up against the monarchy. What do you think of the Knights Templar now? What did you think of them before? Do you have any theories of your own? Tell me about them in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe if you haven't already for more intense videos right here on Talltanic. Number 9. The Gospel of Satan. The Gospel of Satan is not a book you will learn about in any history textbook. The historical significance of the Gospel of Satan and its suspected power has been dismissed and buried by the powers at large. The book is also known as the Grand Grimoire or the Red Dragon, and it was allegedly written in the 16th century by someone named Honorius of Thebes, who apparently claimed to have been possessed by the devil himself. The Gospel of Satan is currently believed to be the oldest and most powerful occult book ever penned, with instructions on how to summon demons and even the great and powerful Lucifer. So far as we know, the grimoire was written in 1520 and was later discovered inside the Tomb of Solomon in 1750. Nobody knows exactly what is written in this forbidden text, but it's commonly believed that the Gospel of Satan is stashed inside the Vatican's secret archive, and that every copy that has ever been made has since been hunted down and destroyed. We don't know why, but that's apparently what happened. The only place where some form of this ancient grimoire may still exist is in the Caribbean, particularly in Haiti, where the book may still be in use by practitioners of voodoo. Number 8. The Roswell Crash. The mysterious Roswell incident is one of the most forbidden pieces of history in our modern times. It all happened in July of 1947, just as the Cold War was coming into existence. At the time, the belief was that a flying saucer was discovered at a ranch near the small town of Roswell in New Mexico. The government, of course, denied this, and for the past 70 years it has been a huge source of speculation and controversy. But what exactly happened back in Roswell in 1947? Here's what we know for sure. A rancher named W.W. Brazil discovered a piece of wreckage on his property in Lincoln County. Prior to this discovery, there had been stories in the national press of flying saucers being spotted in the skies nearby. The Army eventually went onto the rancher's property and took away the materials of whatever crashed, whether UFO or otherwise. The government then said that it had not been a UFO at all, but simply a weather balloon that had crash-landed. But then again, they actually conceded in 1994 that the story of the weather balloon had been nonsense, and instead claimed that they had been testing a secret spy device. According to Roger Lanius, a historian from the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, the reports of bodies being taken from the crash site were actually just test dummies that had crashed along with the spy device. People like Roger claim that the Roswell incident had nothing to do with aliens, but not everybody is so convinced. Number 7. Operation Popeye. believe it or not, the government tried to use the weather as a weapon, and then swiftly buried their attempts in the back pages of history. The United States military actually tried to use rain as a weapon while fighting in Vietnam in the 1970s. A Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter named Seymour Hersh actually wrote an article about it in 1972 in the New York Times, describing how the military tried to seed clouds in Asia to control the rainfall in a particular region. If somebody told you today that the government can literally control the weather, you would probably laugh at that person and call them a conspiracy lunatic. But the government was already doing it over 50 years ago. The government actually started experimenting with weather control in South Vietnam in 1963. What makes this even crazier is that, apparently, meteorological warfare is in no way prohibited by any international law. During the Vietnam War, meteorological warfare was used to make it rain along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the trail used by the Viet Cong to move supplies and weapons where they needed to go. The United States actually managed to make this work with a secret program dubbed Operation Popeye. By somehow manipulating the clouds, the government made it rain, which muddied the Ho Chi Minh Trail and made it more difficult for the enemy to move weaponry and information. However, the program was not a huge success. The government didn't manage to catastrophically flood North Vietnam, and neither did they manage to alter or change the landscape. But considering this was way back in the 1970s, and even today almost nobody knows that this ever happened, it's safe to say that weather manipulation science has never stopped. Number 6. Poisoned alcohol. During Prohibition, the United States poisoned alcohol on purpose to stop people from drinking. And while this may sound like a bonkers conspiracy theory, it's a real thing that happened, and is documented in history and in countless records. It's pretty common knowledge that the government will do whatever they think is necessary to get their point across. And in the early 1900s, the point was to stop drinking. To help with the cause, the government ensured that toxic chemicals were included in lots of industrial alcohols, thereby preventing people from being able to drink them. But this turned out to be pretty deadly. Industrial alcohols during Prohibition were often turned into drinking alcohol for consumers by bootleggers who brewed their own stuff in the country and then sold crates of poisoned liquors to speakeasies and black market dealers. This resulted in people dying. As reported by USA Today, on New Year's Day of 1927, at least 41 individuals died in the Bellevue Hospital in New York from alcohol poisoning, due to alcohol corrupted with things like industrial methanol. Number 5. The Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are a group of mysterious deities who have all but been forgotten by history. These deities go all the way back to the mythological traditions of the ancient Assyrians, Babylonians, and even Sumerians. What's really incredible about the Anunnaki is that there's very little mention of them outside of these 3 very old cultures. However, there is some speculation that the Anunnaki were in fact a group of ancient astronauts that visited Earth during the rise of these old civilizations and taught them how to construct pyramids and other great monuments. There have even been books written about the subject, claiming the Anunnaki were advanced humanoids from the unknown planet of Nibiru, who arrived on Earth about 500,000 years ago and created a lesser life form by mixing their own DNA with the Homo erectus species, thereby creating humans. They did this to create a slave force of creatures to work for them. However, the Anunnaki were forced to leave after a great flood ruined their bases on Earth. Some believe they will return once again to enslave humanity. David Icke even believes that the Anunnaki are reptilian overlords who still rule the world from the shadows even today. Of course, none of these theories have ever been proved by science or archaeology. Mainstream scientists place the Anunnaki in the same category as the gods of ancient Greece or Rome. If there is truth to these theories, we won't know until they come back to Earth. Number 4. The Bilderberg Meeting. The Bilderberg meeting is the most secretive gathering that is held annually on our planet. It began in 1954 as a way to apparently keep the United States and Europe up to date on global activities and to foster friendship. Ever since its original conception, the Bilderberg meeting has been considered highly controversial. This is because the guests are apparently not allowed to ever say what happened inside the meeting. and many people believe that all the biggest global decisions are made during this little get-together. Everything from future war to global policies to media coverage to population manipulation is supposedly discussed at the Bilderberg meeting. Of course, in the modern age, it's very hard to hide anything. Because of this, the Bilderberg meeting has begun sharing information on its attendees. They're still not talking about what happens inside the meeting, but they are telling the public who is attending. But this doesn't make us feel any better, considering that in 2019, the Bilderberg meeting included guests like Jared Kushner, the governor of the Bank of England, a former Google CEO, the NATO Secretary General, and the Microsoft CEO. Considering this meeting is filled with the top members of the biggest tech companies, as well as defense professionals from various governments, and even the heads from big banks, well, it's pretty clear that they're not just talking about pleasantries. Number 3, the Forbidden City. The Forbidden City is an actual forbidden city, and it has survived for 600 years. The Forbidden City still stands in the center of modern Beijing, and to this day it acts as the symbolic center of power for China. The Forbidden City has survived fire, war, and countless internal power struggles. It is the largest palace complex in the world, according to CNN, but it's separated from the rest of the city, you know, where the peasants live, by a giant moat, although it's doubtful there are any sharks or alligators in the moat. Between the Ming and Qing dynasties, at least 24 emperors ruled over the Forbidden City, and even when the well-known Chairman Mao burned and destroyed many of the ancient Chinese cultural structures in Beijing to build factories, the Forbidden City remained unharmed. And don't worry, here is the forbidden part. The Forbidden City was completed in 1420 after nearly 20 years of intense labor and architectural design. The reason it became known as the Forbidden City is, of course, because it was off limits to the general public. This was a city of emperors and their kin, and their protectors and their servants, not for the commoners of the kingdom. Number 2, Illuminati Truth. The Illuminati are, without a doubt, the most notorious secret organization on the planet, and their forbidden history is steeped in speculation and misunderstanding. Prepare to have your socks blown off, because the Order of the Illuminati supposedly began life as a Bavarian secret society in the late 1700s. Back then, it was a society where intellectual people could go to discuss their opposition to the elitist influence and religious doctrines imposed on their everyday life. But just like the Freemasons, the Order of the Illuminati became outlawed by the religious groups of the day and pushed into the shadows. And that is where the Illuminati stayed until the 1960s. The modern incarnation of the Illuminati came about during the counterculture crave of the 60s and 70s, when anarchists began making outlandish claims about a group known as the Illuminati, who were controlling the world. The hard truth here, and very sorry to say it, is that there is no proof at all that the Order of the Illuminati even exists, and definitely no proof that they're governed by reptilian overlords. Number 1. The lost civilization of Cahokia. Cahokia was the largest and most advanced city in all of the southern United States before the arrival of Columbus, and also one of the most secretive civilizations that you'll never learn about in a textbook. Cahokia was once located in the south of Illinois, very close to present-day St. Louis. It was the biggest city north of Mexico, crafted by a group of local Native Americans who thrived all along the Mississippi River. The city was apparently sophisticated and cosmopolitan, and yet its history is unknown and even ignored. A lot of this has to do with the fact that people like to believe the Native Americans were nothing but a bunch of primitive savages, when of course that is not true. The best proof to show just how advanced and culturally savvy the Native Americans were before their land was stolen and they were almost completely wiped out is Cahokia. It apparently drew people from all over the southern United States, like a giant business hub where trade allowed folks to prosper. But here's where history gets really strange. Cahokia began to decline after its population peaked in the year 1100. The population quickly shrank and then vanished off the face of the map by 1350. Scholars and historians have no idea what happened to this culture or where they went. The only evidence we have today of their existence is a collection of earth mounds that clearly reveal a once massive city stood very close to modern-day St. Louis. What's your favorite branch of forbidden history? Number 10. caveman flutists. It's believed that early humans spent a lot of their time sitting around the fire, bashing rocks together and grunting like cavemen. But according to new archaeological evidence, early modern humans were also busy mastering the creation of musical instruments. One of the first ever instruments has just been found, and it dates back 40,000 years. Can you guess what kind of instrument it was? It was a flute, crafted from mammoth ivory. It turns out the cavemen actually sat around the fire and enjoyed music, just like we do today. It appears that human beings have been creative ever since we figured out how to punch holes in hollow pipes of bone. But here's where things get even more interesting. The old mammoth ivory flutes were discovered in the same European cave system in which the oldest known example of art representing a human was discovered, dating back around 35,000 years. With all this evidence combined, it appears that this particular branch of human was incredibly advanced when it came to sharing songs, being innovative with music, and boasting artistic creativity. This is known as the Aurignacian culture, and they predate almost every other type of human living from Italy to France and England. Number 9. Ancient fruitcake in Antarctica. This next artifact isn't exactly mysterious as for what it is, but for how long it has remained fresh. Basically, scientists have discovered the oldest fruitcake ever. Yeah, a fruitcake. It's common knowledge that fruitcakes stay crisp for a pretty long time, but conservators in Antarctica have come upon a fruitcake that lasted for quite a bit longer than expected. In one of the very first buildings ever constructed, then abandoned in Antarctica, way back in 1899 by a Norwegian team and later used again in 1910 during the Terra Nova expedition of the famous explorer Robert Falcon Scott, researchers found a piece of cake 106 years old. According to the Antarctic Heritage Trust, it was even documented that Scott took this exact brand of fruitcake with him on the expedition. It looks like the cake got left behind, nobody wanted to eat it, and it sat in the abandoned structure for over 100 years until it was just recently discovered. But here's the really amazing part. The cake itself is actually so well preserved that it's almost edible. Of course, this is thanks to the cold Antarctic weather, but it's still pretty impressive. The cake was part of over 1,500 other artifacts, all collected from the 2 ancient huts at Cape Adare in Antarctica. Number 8. Ancient tattoos. An ancient tattooing tool has recently been discovered in North America, and so far as we know, it could be the oldest tattooing artifact ever found on the continent. What's really crazy is that the tool was just recently found sitting inside of an old box inside of museum storage. An anthropology PhD candidate at Washington State University stumbled upon the instrument completely by accident. It happened while he was taking inventory of the different artifacts at the university. According to Washington State themselves, his find has great significance, as it could help researchers to understand what role tattoos played in the indigenous cultures of North America. We know almost nothing about the tattooing practices of prehistoric people throughout Native American cultures. What archaeologists do know is that tattooing was more rampant thousands of years ago than it is today, especially for religious groups and wealthier individuals who covered themselves in tattoos to show off their abundance. However, the big issue here is that ink is not generally preserved even in mummified bodies. For example, the oldest figurative tattoos were recently discovered on Egyptian mummies that were 5,000 years old, according to the Journal of Archaeological Science. But this is very rare. As of today, not a single tattoo has been found on any preserved human body throughout the United States. And that's what makes the discovery of the tattooing artifact so amazing. Hey, before we continue, I want to say thanks for checking out the channel. Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 7. Russell Cave National Monument Artifacts. One of the lesser-known archaeological sites in North America is the Russell Cave National Monument, which is about an hour away from Chattanooga and just west of Bridgeport in Alabama. Russell Cave was carved into the earth by underground erosion and is the oldest rock shelter to be regularly inhabited in the eastern United States. As far as we know, the cave had been used by humans for thousands and thousands of years. Some of the most amazing artifacts discovered in this cave system include spear points used by ancient Native Americans for hunting giant sloths, mastodons, and even large bison. But that's not all. There have also been stone tools discovered that scientists believe were used in farming techniques within the last 1,000 years. As for the cave itself, it probably sheltered between 15 and 30 people at a time, making them literal cave people. In addition to the stone tools, archaeologists also found leftover charcoal from fires, animal bones, shards of pottery, and even the remains of a couple of humans. This is definitely one of the most mysterious and often overlooked archaeological wonders in the United States, and if you ever get a chance, you should definitely check it out. Number 6, the reindeer stick artifact. The swimming reindeer is a mysterious artifact carved from the tip of a mammoth tusk. It was first discovered in the mountains in the south of France in 1866 by a French engineer named Picadau de Lille. He found it in 2 pieces, which, when put together, depict a female reindeer being followed by a larger male reindeer. What's really interesting, though, is that it wasn't until the early 20th century that the 2 pieces were actually put together to create the one single piece. And because of the material it's created from, it's generally believed that it came from the time of the last Ice Age. What makes it so mysterious is that nobody's really sure what it was used for. There are notches along one side, which some people have theorized were used by hunters to mark how many reindeers they killed during the hunt, or even how many seasons of hunting they survived. Of course, the most amazing part of the figure is just knowing that our ancient ancestors carved it from the tusk of a dead mammoth, and that they were living alongside such magnificent beasts before their extinction. It's currently sitting in the British Museum and is one of the oldest and most intricate works of art that has ever been found. Number 5, the Lion Man. The Lion Man is yet another mysterious artifact from our ancient ancestors from about 40,000 years ago. The Lion Man is considered a sculpted masterpiece of great originality, huge technical skill, and unbelievable imagination. As with most surviving artifacts from before the Ice Age, the Lion Man was crafted from mammoth ivory. It's only a few inches tall, and it depicts a hybrid creature with the body of a human and the head of a cave lion. Judging by the incredible artistic detail, this cat-human hybrid was meant to be powerful and mysterious, and from a world beyond anything found in nature. According to the British Museum, this is the first known representation of a being that does not exist in the physical world, and it could be the first real leap that our ancestors made from the world of the living to the world of the supernatural. The Lion Man was first discovered in a cave in the south of Germany back in 1939, and scientists know, by the erosion on its body, that it was probably passed around from person to person as part of a ritual. But of course, we don't know what kind of ritual it was. The ancient humans may have used the Lion Man as a sort of talisman, or even as a kind of good luck charm before going out to hunt. It could also have been some kind of god created by telling stories and creating myths of their own. Unfortunately, we will probably never know the stories that were told around the fire about the Lion Man 40,000 years ago. Number 4, the Lomekwi stone tools. The artifacts we're about to discuss are so ancient that they were created before humans had even evolved. This revelation comes from the Lomekwi 3 excavation site in Kenya. Researchers recently discovered tools carved out of rock that date back 3.3 million years ago. The analysis of these stone tools was recently published in the journal Nature. They were found inside of a dried-up riverbed and consisted of hammers and some cutting instruments. These tools predated anything else ever discovered by at least 700,000 years. Scientists believe humans weren't around back then, and so the ones responsible for building these tools must be distant members of the Homo genus. What's truly fascinating is that, up until now, the earliest evidence of stone tools came from a site in Ethiopia, and they were dated at being 2.6 million years old. And these tools were created by an early human ancestor known as Homo habilis. These newer tools are a bit of a mystery, as we simply don't know which exact genus created them. The scientists involved in the study believed that the tools were used for cracking open nuts and possibly for cutting meat. So far, this is the oldest proof of a human-like rise from our ancestors. using tools to help prepare food in the savannas of Africa. Number 3. The Venus of Hohle Fels. The Venus of Hohle Fels was discovered deep inside of a cave in Germany in 2008, and it dates back to the Paleolithic period, about 30,000 years ago. The mysterious figurine depicts a woman, and would have been made by the first true humans known as Cro-Magnon, those same humans that carved the bone flutes and the Lion Man. But the Venus figurine is interesting, because there have been several different versions found all throughout Europe. The one that we're talking about now is the oldest, but there have definitely been quite a few womanly figures found dating back to around the same time. It has been estimated that it took hundreds of hours to carve this lady out of Stone Age ivory. What's even more interesting is that the figurine has no head. Instead, there's a small ring above her chest that would have allowed someone to wear it as an amulet. According to one of the leading researchers involved with the figurine's discovery, it was likely a symbol of fertility, and perhaps an offshoot of one of the very first religious practices, involving fertility goddesses and lion gods. Number 2. Proof of the Bible. An ancient artifact was recently discovered that could support parts of what was written in the Bible. In the old city of Jerusalem, after 5 long years of digging near the Western Wall, a clay seal was found. The seal dates back 2,700 years, and it may have once belonged to an important city governor. According to Israeli archaeologists, the seal was inscribed in ancient Hebrew saying, belonging to the governor of the city. But wait, you're probably wondering what that has to do with the Bible. Well, the governors of the ancient city of Jerusalem are mentioned several times in the Bible. Basically, the discovery of this seal confirms that governors did exist in the city all those years ago. Up until now, nobody had known for sure if governors were a thing, but now it turns out they probably were. The reason this is so mysterious and revolutionary is that it proves that the Bible was speaking on real things happening over 2,500 years ago. Some are hailing it as proof that every word of the book is true, and others are saying it's just a convenient coincidence. What do you think? Number 1. Ancient hunting weapons. Some very cool weapons used for hunting have recently emerged thanks to ice melting in Norway. Scientists have been scrambling to collect as many ancient artifacts as possible from our medieval ancestors. One of the newest treasures discovered has to do with the tools that the ancient people used to hunt reindeer in the region. Archaeologists have collected over 2,000 artifacts previously trapped in the ice. Most of these were discovered between 2006 and 2015. Thanks to researchers and archaeologists from the Glacier Archaeology program. The oldest artifacts found were about 6,000 years old, and these included the ancient arrows and spears used for hunting reindeer. But there were some newer artifacts too, such as the shoe from 1300 BC. There was even a pair of wooden skis that dated back to the year 700, with the newest artifacts being a walking stick carved with ancient Nordic ruins that dates back as recently as the 11th century AD. What's your favorite ancient artifact? Number 11. Maryland Collection. According to legend, in 2006, a London basement underneath a former orphanage was found to contain thousands of skeletons and other macabre items that became famously known as the Maryland Collection. The story claims that the bizarre objects once belonged to an eccentric man named Thomas Theodore Maryland, who, according to the official Maryland Cryptid Museum website, was a crypto-naturalist, fringe zoologist, and xenoarchaeologist. The site goes on to claim that the collection's alleged 19th century specimens are not a fairy tale, but that Maryland was a true scientist whose mysterious objects challenge our understanding of biology, chemistry, and the very laws of physics, followed by the outrageous assertion that empirical evidence and rational thought hold sway here. But according to Demilked, the plain and simple truth is that the Maryland Cryptid Museum's so-called artifacts are the product of a fantastical story dreamed up by a London-based illustrator, writer, and sculptor known as Alex C.F. Furthermore, a Snopes.com investigation found no records of an individual by Maryland's name actually ever existing, indicating that the man was a fictional character conjured up in Alex C.F.'s mind. Number 10. Lost grandfather. A family known as the Carrolls spent months digging for their long-lost grandfather's body before finding it buried 8 feet or 2.4 meters underground in their Long Island, New York basement in 2018, over half a century after the man, named George, had vanished. Even more strangely, they uncovered the family's patriarch's remains the day before Halloween, making some newsreaders initially wonder if the discovery was part of a spooky or perhaps sinister holiday gag. But the police assured the public that the gruesome find was entirely real. While all the family members could do at the time was speculate, they firmly believed that the remains belonged to the long-missing grandfather, who had disappeared in 1961. According to the police, the family was always aware of the man's disappearance and had long suspected he might be buried in the basement. On a hunch one day, the grandsons, Michael Jr. and Christopher, began digging. And after an exhaustive search, they found what they were looking for. A DNA test eventually proved the family's suspicions correct. The remains belonged to George Carroll, a Korean War veteran whose 3 children were simply told one day that their dad had gone outside to do something, only to never return home. George's kids were left in a tough position, lacking closure over what happened to their dad and left with nothing but rumors to go on. While it may never be known why they suspected that George's remains were buried in the basement, they were clearly on a mission to dispel gossip that he had returned to Korea or gone elsewhere. Oddly, nobody ever reported George missing all those years ago, and police were unable to definitively determine what led to his death and disappearance, leaving the long-standing mystery only partially solved. Number 9. Secret tunnels. In early 2019, construction work was halted on a secondary school in County Meath, Ireland, after workers discovered previously unknown tunnels while preparing foundations for prefabricated classrooms. Local Senator Ray Butler obtained images of what authorities believe are the remnants of the Trim Jail, which was demolished during the 1950s. The jail was built in 1834 to replace the previous detention facility that occupied the site, and was thereafter converted into an industrial school, where some schoolboys murdered an assistant teacher named John Kelly in 1912. There were underground cells in the Goyle jail when it was demolished. It was just blown up, so it makes sense that they are intact, local historian and county councilor Noel French explained. Michael Hughes, chairperson of Trim Tourism Network and vice chairperson of Boyne Valley Tourism, hailed the discovery as significant in terms of local tourism. "I think we should pull back and take a look at what's down there," Hughes told the Meath Chronicle, adding, "I think it would be a terrible shame to cover over what's there and to fill it all in. There's a great opportunity to explore and see what's down there." Following the discovery, the site was sealed off pending further investigation by a structural engineer, according to a Department of Education representative, who spoke with RTE News. Meanwhile, site planners began looking for an alternative location for the school. Have you ever discovered a secret tunnel while exploring? Tell me about it. What do you think it was for? Who made it? Let me know in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Talltanic if you haven't already. There are tons of great videos just like this one coming out very, very soon. Number 8. Missing persons. While executing a search warrant in Columbus, Ohio earlier this year, authorities discovered 2 partially dismembered human corpses buried in concrete in the home's basement. They tentatively identified the bodies as possibly belonging to 2 missing persons, Henry Clay Watson, aged 49, and Tara Lynn Pennington, aged 46, both who lived nearby when they were reported missing in 2018. Unfortunately, it was too late to save the individuals who succumbed to a gruesome fate at the address, whoever they may be. Autopsy results regarding their identities are pending, but this wasn't the first time law enforcement learned of missing persons being kept in someone's basement. One fateful afternoon in October 1987, a young Philadelphia woman named Josefina Riviera frantically contacted police, letting them know that her and 5 other women were being held captive in a man's basement. Riviera had spent considerable time gaining their captor, Gary Heidnick's trust, eventually convincing him to let her visit her family. Instead, she rushed to the authorities. By then, Heidnick had murdered 2 of his prisoners while continuing to systematically assault the others daily. He committed unspeakable acts against his captives, including damaging their hearing with a screwdriver and forcing them to languish, huddled together in a tiny, wasty pit in his basement. While the deaths of the two Heidnik captives are certainly tragic, thankfully, police rescued 4 women alive. Some of the survivors dispute Riviera's culpability in the incident, claiming she was an accomplice more than an advocate. To this day, she adamantly claims that she only helped torture the other women in a long, drawn-out attempt to get herself and them to safety. Regardless, Heidnik received the death penalty for his crimes and was executed in 1999. Number 7. Alligator. When police in Madison Township, Ohio, received a strange tip in March of last year directing them to a local resident's basement, they may not have been expecting to find a fully grown, 5-foot-long, that's 1.5 meters, American alligator. But that's exactly what they encounter, leading Commander Daryl Brenneman to tell CNN, "I've never seen anything like that in my 17 years in the department." Police explained that the woman had kept the gator in her basement for 25 years, after her son purchased the reptile at a flea market. Alligators, hyenas, tigers, bears, lions, and some other animals are banned from ownership under Ohio Senate Bill 310. The homeowner put up no fight when it came to surrendering the creature, and the Ohio Department of Agriculture came and removed it. Shelby Croft, a spokeswoman from the agency, told CNN that the animal was in good health and didn't require any special care. Officials transported the alligator to a sanctuary in South Carolina, where he is peacefully living out his remaining years. Number 6. An explosive weapon. It's not entirely unusual for World War II-era explosives and other weapons to turn up in Europe, the United States, and in some other places. Yet these discoveries are always surprising to some degree, especially on the rare occasion that they happen within one's home. Recently, Dr. Ralph Haynes, a Durham, North Carolina homeowner, found a mortar in his newly renovated basement, prompting authorities to close down multiple streets in the area. The resident told ABC 11 that he'd been renovating his home for about a month when he discovered the mortar in a crawl space. After noticing that the firing pin was intact, Haynes carefully moved the weapon to a separate garage and contacted the Durham County Bomb Squad. For the next 2 hours, the squad handled the explosive while residents in the area eagerly waited to go home. Earlier this year, another Raleigh-Durham resident found a similar mortar in the ground, making Haynes' discovery the second of its type in the area so far this year. Number 5. Skeletal remains. In late 2020, somebody discovered skeletal human remains in a basement inside an Avondale, Ohio home. Authorities responded to a call regarding a very old corpse, according to Fox 19, and began working diligently to identify the deceased individual, who was unrecognizable and had no ID near them. Along with the bones, investigators found a cell phone and the person's clothing, and considered both items crucial in their quest to figure out who they were. Initially, the local coroner claimed that these items were over a decade old, but the phone's serial number led detectives to someone who had given the device to a woman named Neva Johnson, who last posted on social media in 2015. From there, authorities tracked down Johnson's relatives, including her son and daughter, who described their mother as semi-nomadic, with a tendency to disappear once in a while. Although police positively identified Johnson, they have not yet completely solved the mysteries surrounding her death. For now, at least, her family has been able to properly lay her to rest as they await further answers. Number 4. Pythons. Police in Bikers, Ohio, were called to residences to deal with ball pythons, not once, but at least twice in 2020. In October last year, police removed a 4 to 5 foot long, 1.2 to 1.5 meter specimen from someone's home. Unlike some other cases of creepy reptiles being found underneath residents' homes, including some on today's list, these instances did not result from people keeping pets that they shouldn't have. In the most recent case, the homeowner said they had no idea how the ball python had entered their dwelling, and that the animal was not their pet, according to Bikers Police Department Lieutenant Tom Walker, who spoke with the Telegraph Forum. It had coiled up on the water heater. I believe it was trying to get warm. It was very docile, Walker explained, adding that the resident discovered the creature upon entering their basement. This was the police department's first instance dealing with a ball python in somebody's basement, although months earlier they had removed one from another home. The incidents prompted law enforcement to urge locals to take proper care of their pets. Number 3, a vanished man. Last year, a 38-year-old Detroit resident named Cam Franks disappeared from Faithful Helping Hands Community Services, a community outreach building he was supposedly last seen leaving on March 14th. Police reported the man missing a few weeks later, noting that he was physically fine but in poor mental health at the time. A 5-month search ensued until finally somebody found Mr. Franks' remains in the facility's basement, leading to more questions than answers regarding his disappearance. Police were unsure why nobody had searched the basement for the missing man, but announced that he had appeared to have died of natural causes. Frank's understandably distraught sister, Kai, criticized police, stating that Faithful Helping Hands should have been the first place they searched for her brother, a known wanderer who lost his way and met a tragic end in ironically familiar territory. All you had to do was be in his company, Kai told Fox News shortly after Cam's body was discovered, adding, "He could feed and wash himself, he was physically active, you just had to watch him." A sad story indeed. Number 2, a 30-year-old murder case. Last year, French workers discovered a decades-old corpse in the basement of a derelict mansion in Paris while performing renovations. They contacted authorities about the gruesome find, sparking a wildly outdated murder investigation. The mansion, which had recently sold for $41.2 million, was abandoned in the 1980s, according to The Guardian. Renovations were abruptly halted so that detectives could carry out their investigation, acting on the suspicion that the body had been decomposing at the property for at least 30 years. Once the residence of poet and playwright François Coppée, the once elegant structure and its environs were deteriorating and overgrown by the time the corpse was discovered. Months earlier, the property had sold to a buyer named Jean-Bernard Lafonta at a short-lived auction by a discreet Dutch company. He paid nearly 6 times the baseline asking price, only to have work on the home come to a screeching halt following the shocking discovery of the body. Everyone was devastated to learn it had been there so long without any of us knowing. Sabine Le Breton, vice president of a local association dedicated to saving the mansion, told The Guardian. Authorities identified the deceased individual as Jean-Pierre Renaud and determined he had, indeed, died about 30 years earlier. Renaud was a known vagrant with a drinking problem, who police suspect met his untimely fate when he ventured into the property's basement and crossed paths with another territorial drifter. The man's children were informed of his death and, well, that was pretty much that. The man's children were informed of his death and his remains were buried. Plans to renovate the mansion were scheduled to resume shortly thereafter. Number 1, a fugitive. After being arrested on felony drug charges in October of last year in Antrim County, Michigan, 35-year-old Jennifer Andrea Robtoy managed to escape the police vehicle transporting her to her next destination, which was presumably jail. The regional fugitive team was deployed to apprehend the woman, and their investigation led them to a residence where they believed she was hiding out. They found her in the basement, hiding beneath tarps covering an old snowmobile, and took her into custody without incident. Surprisingly, the officers placed Robtoy in the front seat of the police vehicle per the department's policy, despite her previous escape from the same seating arrangement. Apparently, the Michigan State Police's fully marked patrol cars lack backseat cages, giving the arresting officer no other choice. Thankfully, Robtoy did not escape the second time around. She was taken to the county jail on her original felony drug charges, as well as charges related to her escape, including resisting and obstructing police and reckless driving. Lesson to be learned here: don't run from the police and hide in someone's basement. Face the music. As unpleasant as it may seem, it's a lot easier than going down on additional charges. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to learn more about scary basement discoveries, let me know in the comments below. Number 10. Foxtrot-class submarine. The Foxtrot-class submarine, currently abandoned inside of a dry dock in Kronstadt, Russia, is one of the coolest abandoned objects seen in the world today, and one of the most mysterious. The Foxtrot submarine was a diesel-electric patrol sub crafted by the Soviet Union, designed to replace the more primitive Zulu class of submarines. The first Foxtrot entered the Navy back in 1958, and by 1983, at least 58 of these vehicles had been built for the Soviet Navy. It had an underwater endurance of about 10 days, it was extremely crowded on board, and by the time the last submarine was launched, it was completely outdated and obsolete. Still, the Russians used these submarines all the way until 2000, when the final Foxtrot was scrapped and disposed of. Now, this abandoned submarine is believed to have come from the Libyan Navy. Not all the submarines were only used by Russia. They made some for the Ukrainian Navy, the Indian Navy, the Libyan Navy, and even the Cuban Revolutionary Navy. It's highly likely that the destroyed body of the submarine currently abandoned in Kronstadt was taken to be scrapped, then completely forgotten about and abandoned. Number 9. Castle Village. There's an abandoned castle village in Turkey called Burj Al Babas, and it's beyond creepy. At first glance, it doesn't even look like a village. It looks like a set piece for some kind of weird Disney movie. In fact, looking at the pictures of the abandoned castle village, you would think you were looking at tiny replica objects, but these are, in fact, houses. They were constructed for luxury buyers in the foreign community. But like many of the abandoned objects sitting around the world today, this place never saw any action. The completely ridiculous homes were never lived in. It's currently sitting empty in the northwestern region of Turkey, and according to Business Insider, the developers of the project have already filed for bankruptcy and backed out of all their purchases. The result is that we have a weird, almost dystopian Disney village that looks like a bunch of hollowed-out Lego houses. The roads aren't built, there's no electricity, and it doesn't look like anyone's going to move in anytime soon. What's even weirder about this abandoned village is that the developers wanted to heat the homes using a natural hot spring in the area. The chief executive officer even told the New York Times that people would be able to drink the water, that the water would be able to heal kidney stones, and that by bathing in the natural spring water that would be flowing through the taps, a person could heal their skin problems, even curing rheumatism and slipped discs. Number 8. The rides at Joyland. There's nothing more fascinating than an abandoned amusement park, which is why the Joyland amusement park in Wichita, Kansas is next on the list. This bizarre attraction was in operation for 55 years, open from between 1949 and 2006. Now, the once prosperous amusement park is home to a horde of strange abandoned objects that would make for a very creepy backdrop to a Stephen King movie. The park was originally founded by a man named Lester Ottaway and his trio of sons. During the park's peak, there were over 24 attractions, including a wooden roller coaster ride. But the story of the abandoned objects in this park gets a little tragic. Lester Ottaway passed away in the middle of the 1950s, and his sons then sold the family park. The new buyers spent 30 years trying to make the park succeed, adding all kinds of new and crazy rides. And then, a little girl was injured in April of 2004 after falling 30 feet, or about 9 meters, off the Ferris wheel. This spelled doom for the park, which ultimately closed in the summer of 2004. Now, the giant slide is covered in leaves and branches, the original Joyland wooden roller coaster is sitting with its paint peeling off, and the rest of the park is in a horrible state of disrepair. But if you're interested in cool abandoned rides, this is definitely the place to check out on your next urban exploring adventure. Have you ever gone to an abandoned amusement park? What did you see there? Was it scary? Tell me about your experiences in the comments section below. Then remember to subscribe to Talltanic if you haven't already for more amazing videos just like this one. Number 7. 1962 Ford Thunderbird. A 1962 Ford Thunderbird had recently been found on sale online after being completely abandoned. The The sellers of the car have described it as a barn find, spending at least 2 decades sitting completely unused in storage. And yet, despite being left to rot in a worthless old storage unit, the car was discovered in near-perfect condition. Even after an estimated 22 years in total isolation with nobody caring for it, the car still runs and drives amazingly, proving once and for all that the American automotive industry back in the 1960s was the absolute best. Plus, one thing that's really great about an old car sitting abandoned for so long is that it comes with some very cool goodies. For example, when the Thunderbird was finally removed from storage, it was discovered with the owner's manual, the workshop manual, and even the convertible top manual. These may not sound as exciting as something like first edition Pokemon cards to some of our younger viewers, but to car enthusiasts, this is a pretty incredible abandoned discovery. Even more incredible is that the car only has about 73,000 miles or 120,000 kilometers on it, meaning that after sitting for 22 years, it has less mileage than most trade-ins you find at the dealership. Number 6, the Bridge to Nowhere. There is a bridge to nowhere located in the San Gabriel Mountains near Los Angeles. The strange and abandoned bridge was apparently constructed in 1936 over a small gap of the East Fork of the San Gabriel River. The bridge was originally supposed to link between the roadway and the valley to the south, but it ended up being nothing. In the spring of 1938, there was a huge flood that shifted the landscape of the canyon and literally destroyed the road that had been leading to the bridge. The result was that the road never got rebuilt and the entire construction project was abandoned. But the bridge was already finished, so it was just kind of left in the middle of nowhere to serve no purpose. Now the bridge is working as a tourist attraction. It's an abandoned structure that you can see on an afternoon walk just outside of Los Angeles. In fact, the Bridge to Nowhere is a very popular hiking area. People actually come here to picnic and swim in the river underneath the bridge. The scenery is fantastic, you get the best sunrises and sunsets, and the abandoned bridge looks elegant, smack dab in the middle of an otherwise barren wasteland. You can even bungee jump from the side of the bridge if you're feeling brave. Number 5, Skeleton Temple. The abandoned skeleton of a strange temple in Taiwan is quite a bit different from the picturesque abandoned bridge above the San Gabriel River. This temple is a hollow and oddly creepy shell. The temple appears to be unfinished, and it's located in Taoyuan, just a short train ride from the capital of Taipei. In fact, the building is completely covered in wild foliage and overgrown trees. The abandoned temple is next to a small farm, as well as a few other vacant lots that appear to be abandoned. The temple is also filled with very strange things, such as trash, a horde of bottles, and thousands of small white pellets from an airsoft gun. Someone must have been doing some target practice inside of the abandoned structure. But here's where things get really incredible. In one of the very back unfinished rooms of the temple, there is an abandoned blue sofa chair sitting in the corner and an altar with a stool in front of it, as if someone were visiting the temple on a regular basis, even though it was deserted. If you find yourself in Taiwan and are thinking about exploring some abandoned places and checking out all of the weird abandoned objects in the skeleton temple, you better hope that you don't run into whoever's using this place as their own private shrine. Number 4, Hospital Relics. An urban explorer has just come across one of the strangest places that has ever been found throughout all his adventures. It all happened when a photographer broke into a rural abandoned hospital near Atlanta, Georgia, and documented the entire thing. The hospital was apparently abandoned in 2010, but nobody cleared away any of the objects from inside. The result was that everything being used in the hospital before 2010 was still in there for the photographer to capture in spooky clarity. Not only was the hospital creepy for the fact that it was an abandoned hospital, but all the abandoned medical equipment made it even freakier, such as the abandoned hospital beds, the still and quiet emergency room, the silent radiology department with empty waiting chairs, and the fully functioning MRI machine. The place was an urban explorer's dream location, especially since everything inside the hospital was left pretty much brand new. According to what the urban explorer said, the hospital had been one of the biggest employers in the rural area, but it lacked profitability because there weren't enough clientele coming in. Basically, there weren't enough people getting sick to keep the hospital running. So, the hospital ran out of local funding and the county officials didn't have a choice. They had to close the facility, leaving everything inside with hopes that it would one day open yet again. So far, everything inside the creepy abandoned hospital is in the exact same place as when it closed, just waiting to be used again. Number 3. Into the wild. There is an abandoned relic like no other sitting in the Alaskan wilderness. Or at least, there was. The bus is known popularly as the Into the Wild bus, or sometimes as Bus 142, or the Magic Bus. It has been sitting in the Alaskan wilderness, completely abandoned for years, and it became famous as the place where a certain young man documented his own last days over a period of 114 days back in 1992. Because of the cult sensation over the movie and book Into the Wild, this abandoned bus has been a sort of lure for people to venture into the wilderness and find it. After all, this was the place where Christopher McCandless hiked to, stayed in, and then died from starvation. Christopher had kept a journal of his entire experience, and after he was discovered dead, John Krakauer wrote a book in 1996 based on the young man's journal. And while a lot of people have seen the movie, not many people know that this is a real bus and a real location and a real thing that happened. At least, it was until just recently. According to the Tampa Bay Times, the Alaska National Guard flew the bus out of the forest in 2020 after too many people died trying to reach the famous abandoned landmark. According to the Department of Natural Resources Commissioner, people are encouraged to enjoy Alaska's wild areas safely, and the bus was simply too dangerous and cost too many visitors their lives. If you ask me, this is an actual travesty. Number 2. The Myrtles Plantation Mirror. The Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana is one of the strangest and most haunted places in all of the United States. Legend says that the plantation is home to at least a dozen ghosts. It's also been reported that at least 10 murders have occurred in the house throughout its history. There are a lot of different stories surrounding this horrific plantation, with tales of torture, sadness, and of course, despair. But one of the strangest stories involves an abandoned object that can apparently still be found inside the house, and that apparently holds the spirit of a girl named Sarah Woodruff and her 2 young children. So far as the legend goes, the mirror somehow managed to trap the spirit of Sarah and her kids after they were poisoned by an unknown murderer. Even all these years after the plantation was abandoned, people still claim that they have seen handprints and visages inside the mirror. While we obviously have no scientific evidence that this is real, when you see a handprint appear in an abandoned mirror and you feel your blood run cold, you don't really need science. Of course, one of the reasons why this plantation and the objects within it are so haunted is because the house reputedly was built over an Indian burial ground, but again, this is just hearsay. Number 1. The Chained Oak. The chained oak is one of the more incredible abandoned objects that nobody really knows what to make of. It's located in the middle of nowhere in the United Kingdom, and it's really nothing more than an old tree wrapped up in chains. But does it ever look strange? The tree was apparently wrapped up in chains back in 1821 because of a curse that came about when the Earl of Shrewsbury refused to give a desperate woman the money she asked for. She placed a curse on the tree, saying that every branch that fell from the tree would cause a member of the Earl's family to die. Shortly after this happened, one of the Earl's relatives apparently died under very mysterious circumstances. And so, the Earl chained up all the branches of the oak tree so that none of them could fall down. Of course, it's extremely difficult to say whether this legend is true or not, but it is a plain fact that the oak has been fastened with chains for dozens of years. Nobody has the gall to go in and take the chains down, and for the foreseeable future, the tree and its chains will remain abandoned in the forest. What's the coolest abandoned object you've ever found? Number 10. Mask of the Bat God. Here is the mask of the Bat God, an ancient jade mask that depicts a bat god from the old Zapotec culture that was recently found inside the insanely well-preserved pyramids at Monte Alban, in the state of Oaxaca in Mexico. The jade mask may look like a jaguar, but it really represents a bat. Keep in mind that the place where it was found, Monte Alban, was once the heart of the enormously powerful Zapotec civilization. Archaeologists and scholars disagree slightly as to what the purpose of the mask served when it was originally created between 100 BC and 200 AD, but everyone agrees it portrays a bat. The mask itself is crafted out of 25 different pieces of jade, one of the most highly valued stones in any Mesoamerican civilization. The mask also has yellow eyes made from the fragments of shells. Considering its age, the mask is in fantastic condition. The mask is currently on display at the National Museum of Anthropology, located in Mexico City. But what about the meaning behind the mask? Well, bats were very symbolic to the Zapotec civilization. Because the animal had wings, lived in caves, tombs, and even temples, the Zapotec associated them with the underworld. So, they made a bat god the protector of the sacred world of the dead, ruling over their ancestors who roamed throughout the underworld. Number 9. Mummy with a gold tongue. Something very strange has just been found in Egypt. A mummy has been discovered with a particularly bizarre artifact inside of his mouth. This mummy had a tongue of gold, and archaeologists just found it at an ancient site in Egypt called Taposiris Magna. The mummy lived about 2,000 years ago, and the Egyptian Antiquities Ministry recently claimed in a statement that they believed the embalmers placed the golden tongue into the mouth of the mummy after death to ensure that the deceased person would be able to speak properly once in the afterlife. The thing is, it was widely believed that when a person died, they met Osiris, the Egyptian god of the underworld. But if for whatever reason the person couldn't speak, they would be unable to talk to the god. Therefore, this mummy could have had a speech impediment or some kind of ailment that prevented them from talking. In order for the mute person to speak with Osiris in the underworld, he was given a golden tongue in death. This is one of the most bizarre artifacts ever found inside an actual mummy, as normally their organs are placed inside of jars. This guy must have been extremely wealthy for his family to stick a golden tongue in his mouth and bury him with it. Have you ever visited the pyramids of Egypt or seen a sarcophagus or a mummy in real life? What was it like? Tell me about it in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Talltanic if you haven't already to get more awesome and intense videos, just like this one. Number 8. King Tut's camping bed. Everyone is familiar with King Tutankhamun, or King Tut for short. He was the infamous pharaoh who ruled Egypt over 3,300 years ago. And one of the most interesting and recent discoveries related to this man is his camping bed. This artifact was originally found by a British archaeologist named Howard Carter when he entered the king's tomb back in 1922. The camping bed is a small artifact, a unique piece of furniture that was remarkably comfortable for its time. It had an elegant design and was crafted using sophisticated technology. And even though it was originally found in 1922, it wasn't until just recently that studies were done on this artifact to see what it was used for. According to the report from Live Science, the bed folded into a Z shape using an ingenious mechanism. Basically, this thing was the original futon, and King Tut would have used it for taking naps wherever he wanted. The bed had hinges, the woven mat that the king laid on was insanely comfortable, and he probably took it with him on hunting trips. This isn't super surprising, considering King Tut is known to have suffered from malaria, and he had a club foot. This means he had to use a cane, and the camping bed was probably necessary when he went on long hunts or any other expedition where he could get exhausted very easily. Number 7. Fossils in the Petrified Forest. A very cool fossil has recently been found in a petrified forest that dates back 220 million years. This fossil is a surprising new specimen that lived during the Triassic period. It was found in Petrified National Forest Park in 2019, and according to the paleontologist who discovered it, it's one of the rarest types of fossils ever found in the western United States. The paleontologist's name is Ben Klingman, and he found a tiny jaw fossil less than an inch, about 2 centimeters in length. How someone even finds such a tiny fossil is a mystery to me, but it's cool nonetheless. He named the fossil Cataigirodon venetus, which translates from Greek as blue thunderstorm tooth. He named it after Thunderstorm Ridge, the area where he discovered the fossil. But what about the animal? Apparently, the tiny jaw fossil that was discovered once belonged to an animal about the size of a chipmunk, but far more ferocious than any chipmunk or squirrel you've ever seen. It's known as a cynodont, and paleontologists still aren't sure if the creatures had fur or not. These critters were small. They would have easily been mistaken for a rat or chipmunk or hamster. But the big difference is that they didn't have ears. Rather than ears, these weird animals had only holes in the sides of their skulls, just like reptiles do today. Of course, considering how small this creature was, it mainly feasted on prehistoric insects. Number 6, the southern T-Rex. Let's move to a slightly bigger archaeological discovery and several million years newer. I'm talking about a new Tyrannosaurus, closely related to the legendary Tyrannosaurus rex that was recently found in Alabama. This creature lived 77 million years ago in what is today the southern United States, primarily in Georgia and Alabama. It was found by 3 scientists, including David R. Schwimmer, a paleontologist from Columbus State University. Their new dinosaur is more primitive than any other Tyrannosaurus that lived at the same time. But other than that, not a lot is known about the dinosaur. The thing is that the fossils have been around since the 1980s, but nobody had a name or classification for the animal. It wasn't until recently, when these 3 scientists got together, that they figured out that they were looking at a new species and named it the Appalachiosaurus montgomerensis, meaning the Appalachian lizard from Montgomery. In fact, the name of this new dinosaur has been recognized by the Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology. As a cousin of the T-Rex, this Alabama dino was smaller, it had a shorter snout, it boasted more primitive features, and it had a less developed brain. Basically, it was not as mentally sharp, and it was weaker, but it would turn into the ultimate king of the dinosaurs in the Cretaceous period. Number 5, the 6-headed chief. One of the biggest archaeological mysteries going on right now is who is sitting in the tomb of the 6-headed chief. A bizarre grave was recently found in Scotland, holding some pretty interesting medieval remains. The reason the remains are so interesting is because they are surrounded by 5 heads. It's one skeleton in a grave with its skull circled by 5 others. DNA analysis has shown that the skulls belonged to members of the skeleton's family. Researchers now know that one of the skulls belonged to the man's son, one was his uncle, another was his nephew, and the others may have been his father and mother. This individual was buried sometime between the late 13th century and the early 15th century, and what's truly fascinating is that placing disembodied skulls inside of another person's grave was unheard of for that time in Scotland, at least according to an archaeological specialist working on the project. Back in the Neolithic and Bronze Age, body parts were mainly used for worship, but whatever is going on with this person is something altogether new. Harvesting the graves of parents and other family members is as unusual as it gets, and until scientists are able to figure out the identity of this 6-headed chief, they are at a standstill. What we do know is that the man died from an extreme act of violence. After inspecting his skull, researchers from the University of Bradford discovered that a brutal blow from a weapon had cut away part of his face. Why this happened, or who the man was fighting, is still a mystery. Number 4, mysterious underwater monolith. The next amazing archaeological discovery was found underwater. A Stonehenge-styled monolith has recently been found inside the Mediterranean Sea, and it dates back over 9,000 years. This thing was discovered off the coast of Sicily, roughly 130 feet or 38 meters deep. It was definitely made by human hands, and the first estimates placed its weight at around 15 tons. The monolith has been broken into 2 parts, with each part made from local stone. According to archaeologists working on the project, The area in which the monolith was found flooded roughly 9,300 years ago, meaning the monolith had to have been built before this area was underwater. Here's why this discovery is so important and also mysterious. Researchers still don't know which civilization built it. Most of the prominent civilizations in the Mediterranean didn't rise to power for several thousand years after this monolith was constructed. But here's what else. These recent findings are proving that our primitive ancestors had more sophisticated technology than we previously thought. They may not have only been hunters and gatherers. They were also builders. They may have only constructed monoliths out of stone, but it's still pretty impressive. This is especially true when you remember that Stonehenge was built 5,000 years after this submerged structure. Number 3. Mona Lisa's remains. It's widely believed that a woman named Lisa Gherardini was the model for Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece, the Mona Lisa. However, the mystery surrounding this woman is enormous. New archaeological evidence has emerged after researchers investigated the remains of several bodies found buried beneath the Sant'Orsola convent in the Italian city of Florence. The researchers are now saying that they have found the body of the world's most famous model. One of the bodies investigated dates back to the exact time that Lisa Gherardini died, leading them to believe that they finally found the wife of the Florentine silk merchant who passed away in 1542 at the age of 63. There are even records indicating that she was buried somewhere within this historic convent. This may not be super exciting to everyone, but if you're an art enthusiast, this is big news. This is as important to art historians as finding the tomb of Cleopatra is to Egyptologists. But, of course, not everything is perfect. There were only a few remains tested, with no skull found. This means that the face of the woman, who may be the model for the Mona Lisa, can't be digitally reconstructed using new reconstruction techniques. Researchers are confident, but as of yet, there is just not enough DNA to 100% verify that this is in fact the body of Lisa Gherardini. Number 2. Egyptian hairstyles. Hairstyles have changed over the years. Just take a look at the photographs of your parents in the 80s or 90s compared to the hairstyles of today. Hair is always changing, just like fashion. In fact, hairstyles have been changing for thousands of years. Thanks to the preservation of some Egyptian skeletons, we now have a pretty fascinating idea of what the old Egyptian hairstyles looked like. Researchers working inside of an ancient cemetery in the old Egyptian city of Amarna have recently discovered several individuals with different hairstyles still intact. One such woman was found buried with an elaborate hairstyle that used 70 different hair extensions, all attached to her scalp with different layers and different heights. She would have looked absolutely crazy when she was still alive. Plus, this woman had her hair dyed. Not only was her hair dyed, but it was dyed a bright orangish red color, which had been done using a plant called henna may. Basically, extensions and hair coloring are nothing new. The Egyptians were doing it way before people on TikTok. And according to the huge variety of hairstyles found in the Egyptian city of Amarna, the Egyptians were doing it way better. Number 1. Tomb of the Serpent Jaguar priests. The last archaeological discovery today is a big one. We're looking at the tomb of the Serpent Jaguar priests, which were recently uncovered in Peru after being lost for 2,700 years. It was found in the Cajamarca region of Peru, containing the remains of 2 high-ranking priests from the ancient Pacopampa culture, who existed before the Inca. Within the tombs were elaborate grave goods, including a necklace with gold beads, a black ceramic bottle shaped like a serpent with a jaguar head, and several colored pigments that had been dumped inside the tomb, including cinnabar and malachite. And while the meaning of the colored pigments is still a mystery, the truth of the priests is not. First of all, the priests had elongated craniums, meaning that they must have been elite members of the ancient society. The way their bodies were buried is also quite fascinating. They were both buried in the fetal position, with one priest facing north and the other priest facing south. They were buried near a large, square courtyard that would have been used in public meetings and important ceremonies. It's believed that the priests may have been buried in such a way as to continue presiding over the important activities of the local people, even after death. Which of these archaeological discoveries amazed you the most? Number 10. American Cream Draft Horse. As the only draft breed native to the United States, the American Cream Draft Horse has roots that go back to the 1900s. It is instantly recognizable with its signature cream-colored coat that has become known as champagne gold. This breed is also known for having amber or hazel eyes and pink skin. They usually weigh around 1,800 pounds or 816 kilograms. They have a broad chest, short, strong back, and well-muscled hindquarters. They are a good choice for first-time draft horse owners. The breed is said to go back to a mare named Old Granny, who passed on her champagne genes to her offspring. Over the years, the number of creams grew, with the breed later recognized in the 1950s by the Iowa Department of Agriculture. This gave the breed the same status as any other of the draft breeds, but sadly, as machines replaced workhorses, the number of these horses declined, and these majestic creatures almost became extinct. In 1982, breeders attempted to revive the breed, but even today, their numbers are low. Number 9. Dutch Draft. The Dutch Draft is a sturdy horse that is used for its size and strength, and is often used to pull heavy loads in the farming and logging industries. Originating in Holland, the Dutch Draft is similar to other horses bred in the country, where owners look for a large horse with a strong, solid build. Their ability to do hard work for long periods of time are due to their strong muscles, good feet, and easy movements. They are usually chestnut, bay or gray, and sometimes black. Closely resembling the Belgian draft horse, they were developed by breeding Zealand horses with the Belgian and Belgian Ardennes breeds. Owners value them most for their quiet disposition and unhurried movements, though they are also known to get very lively when needed. As the heaviest of all Dutch breeds, they work very well for prolonged, heavy loads, making them a true workhorse for farmers. Number 8. Arabian. The Arabian horse goes back thousands of years. Known as an elegant, spirited horse, they are an intelligent animal that can weigh from 800 to 1,000 pounds, or 362 to 454 kilograms. This horse is believed to have originated in the Arabian Peninsula. Desert Bedouin tribes trace their common history with the horses back to 3000 BC, with meticulous record-keeping and ancestral records cataloging their pedigrees. The breed eventually spread throughout Europe and are known to have contributed to various European breeds, including the Orloff Trotter in Russia and the Percheron in France. They were also later found in the United States by the 1700s. They were bred for their endurance and athleticism. They do well even in harsh conditions, with their compact bodies giving them strength and balance and allow them to do well at almost every horse sport. The colors of this horse range from gray, chestnut, and black. They sometimes have white facial markings or socks, but you'll never find any dilutions, such as cremello or buckskin variations in the breed. With their long, arched necks and floating gaits, they offer a smooth ride and are renowned for their endurance. A beautiful breed that does well as a family horse, a show horse, in competitions, and as a workhorse. It is easy to see why the well-rounded Arabian is so well-loved. What's your favorite horse? Have you ever had one? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 7. Belgian Draft. Throughout the centuries, Belgian breeders were pressured to produce a lighter cavalry horse, but they stuck to their guns when it came to the Belgian draft horse. Breeders practiced selective breeding to keep the bloodline of the Belgian pure, which gave them a versatile, heavy draft horse that boasts exceptional power. These horses are shorter than most, but have heavy, muscled legs. Usually bay or coppery red, breeders in the US bred the horses to have a white mane and tail and chestnut body with white socks. US breeds are also taller and lighter than their heavier, thicker-bodied Belgian counterparts. Bred from large Flemish horses that carried armored knights into battle, the Belgian was in great demand across Europe and believed to be the foundation bloodline for other breeds of Clydesdale, Shire, and Suffolk breeds. Weighing up to 2,000 pounds or 907 kilograms, they are strong and muscular. In fact, the world's tallest horse, named Big Jake, is a Belgian who weighs over 2,500 pounds. That's 1,134 kilograms. These are strong, working horses that can pull tremendous amounts of weight while also doing well in pulling competitions. The Belgian is a sturdy choice for horse lovers. Number 6. Percheron. A heavy draft horse that originated in the valleys of western France, the Percheron became renowned in the 17th century, bred as war horses that could carry fully armored knights. Existing since the Dark Ages, they're a cross between various breeds, including the Belgian draft and the Berber horses, a North African breed with great hardiness and stamina. Before World War II, many Percherons were imported into the US, but many were sent back to help with the war efforts. At one time, Percheron accounted for almost 3/4 of all draft horses being used for farming, forestry, and transporting goods in the US. The Percheron breed is bigger than a Clydesdale. They are a sturdy breed with heavier, muscled shoulders, forearms, and haunches. This is an alert and willing horse. They're intelligent and easy to keep happy and healthy. Today, they are used a lot in parades and festivals. You will often see them pulling tourist carriages or parade floats. The Percheron is known as both a war horse and a diligent workhorse. Throughout the centuries, Percherons have had their ups and downs, though. Through world wars, industrial revolutions, and the Great Depression, needs for the horse have waxed and waned. But even now, numbers of the breed continue to thrive. Number 5. Suffolk. One of the 4 UK breeds of draft horses, the Suffolk horse is like many other draft horses, is used for agriculture and transport purposes. It's one of the oldest breeds of heavy horses in Great Britain, believed to have been around as early as the 16th century. Unlike other breeds, no color other than chestnut is allowed, but there have been 7 different shades of chestnut to give them a distinct look. They usually have a big head with broad forehead and full bright eyes. Their bodies are broad and front, but graceful in back, with long and muscular shoulders. Although they are one of the smaller draft breed horses, they are both docile and powerful, weighing up to 2,000 pounds or 907 kilograms. Among one of the most powerful breeds, Suffolk's was a favorite for ranch hands, using them to transport feed for the rest of the herd, cutting and raking hay in the summers, as well as packing and grooming cross-country ski trails in the winter months. Like other breeds, their numbers suffered as farmers took to heavy machinery to do their chores. As numbers started to dwindle, the Suffolk was increasingly rare, practically dying out by the 1950s. But in 1961, a group of Suffolk breeders took it upon themselves to revive the breed. And after importing more horses to the US, the breed's numbers started to make a comeback. Number 4. Clydesdale. One of the most recognizable breeds, the Clydesdale is more than just the horse from the Budweiser ads. Large in stature, with trademark feathering on their legs and a high-stepping gait, this gentle breed is known for being easy to work with. They can live from 20 to 25 years and weigh anywhere from 1,600 to 2,400 pounds. That's 725 up to 1,089 kilograms. They were originally developed in the 18th and 19th centuries in Scotland, and later brought to Canada and the US, and used, like many other large horses, to power machinery, plow fields, and pull wagons. They are well known for their strength and endurance. Although they are of Scottish origin, most of the Clydesdales are found in the United States. They are among the tallest of horse breeds, standing about 6 feet or 1.8 meters from the ground to the top of their shoulders. Originally bred for heavy work, they have also been crossbred with thoroughbreds to develop sport horses that are strong and level-headed. When they are used in events and parades, they have been known to easily carry 2 drums that weigh 200 pounds or 91 kilograms each, as well as their rider. Strong and agile, these calm horses have characteristically large hooves that weigh 5 pounds or 2.2 kilograms each. Their walking and trotting style gives the impression of a sense of pride, making these gentle giants a good family horse that will prance and play. Number 3. American Quarter Horse. One of the earliest breeds of horses, the American quarter horse originated in the mid-1600s after breeders crossed native Spanish horses brought by the conquistadors to the US with English horses that were imported to Virginia. By the late 17th century, they were already being raced over quarter-mile distances in Rhode Island and Virginia, which is where they garnered the name quarter horses. With thoroughbred blood, they were bred for performance, with the fastest quarter horse able to run 440 yards at 55 miles per hour. Quick and agile, they quickly became a favorite among cowboys during the era of the Wild West, when quarter horses were crossed with Mustangs and Native American horses. Often used to herd cattle, they are fast starters with excellent turning and stopping abilities. Most are solid colors and weigh up to 1,200 pounds, or 544 kilograms. They are still the most popular breed in the US, with nearly 3 million American quarter horses registered worldwide. There are two different body types in quarter horses. One that is stocky and compact, known for its agility and toned muscles, and another that is known as the hunter type, taller and less defined with characteristics that are similar to thoroughbreds. Both are strong and powerful and faster than most other breeds. Popular in both English equestrian events as well as Western speed events, the quarter horse is easily adaptable to a variety of sports, but it also does well as an all-around family horse. Number 2. Shire horse. The tall and strong Shire horse is similar to the Clydesdale, but with massive hooves and feathering on their legs. Another breed that can weigh up to 2,400 pounds, 1,089 kilograms, they have long, arched necks and a Roman nose. They were brought to the US in the mid-1800s, but didn't really catch on in popularity. Because of this, they were used to breed into smaller horse stocks. Known as the tallest horse breeds, they stand up to 6 feet, 1.8 meters from the ground to their shoulders, but some records show they can get even taller than that. In the past, they were utilized to haul ale carts from breweries, to pull wagons on working farms, and to transport enormous coal wagons over rough roads. Usually black, brown, bay, or gray, UK breeding standards are slightly more choosy, not allowing chestnut colors or for their horses to have white markings. With its imposing height and extreme strength, some might shy away from owning a Shire horse, but looks can be deceiving, because they are known for being quite friendly. They are easygoing and confident. With regular brushing and a sturdy ladder to reach all the high points on the horse's body, you can tend to this mellow, strong breed that is known to be both eager to please and to train. Number 1. Mustang. Mustang's name means ownerless beast or stray horse, as the descendants of Spanish horses brought to the Americas by Spanish explorers in the 16th century. As the Spaniards introduced them to the States, both Native Americans and pioneers adopted the animals for transportation, marveling at their speed and stamina. With stocky legs, they were less prone to injury and were able to take long journeys without being hurt. They're medium-sized horses and usually weigh around 800 pounds or 363 kilograms. They can be a variety of colors with patches and spots. They are mostly found in grasslands of the western US in Montana, Nevada, Idaho, and Arizona, to name a few, with some allowed to run free. Mustangs live in large herds that usually have one stallion, around 8 females, and their young. Separate herds have been known to group together when they are in danger. They mostly spend their time grazing and playing together. There are about 25,000 Mustangs in the wild today, but about 100 years ago, there were around 2 million wild Mustangs roaming North America. With no natural predators and the ability to stay healthy on very little food, one can only hope that these wild animals continue to thrive and enjoy their freedom. Thanks for watching. What did you think of these powerful horses? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.